Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Today is Friday, and it's the day after the 4th of July. I hope everybody out there had a great 4th of July. I know I didn't even notice it was 4th of July outside of when I checked Twitter. And I did see an errant firework go off in the distance of the U.S. military post that's near where I live. So that was happening. So yes, that was the extent of 4th of July for me. But it is always in the back of my mind, like these kind of patriotic holidays. I always do kind of take a minute to think about, what that means and, what it means in the modern context and what it means in a historical context. So we'll be talking about that later in the show. But today we're talking the Balancing Coalition. Now, normally when we talk Balancing Coalition, we're talking about like the U.S. Forming a balancing coalition in the Pacific, against a rising China, or NATO as a balancing coalition against, the forces of evil in Russia, right? That's what we normally think of. But in this case, what we're seeing is ultimately the balancing coalition against the EU, the U.S., and I hate to say it, while I still think the America, is not embodied by the administration that happens to be in office. I think it's embodied by the people and the principles of America. Our policies haven't been living up to that. So it's clearly a balancing coalition against some of the, some of the perceived inequities in the international world. So we'll be talking about that today.
Well,
let's see.
Well, I gotta say,
real quick, and then we're also talking the domestic political churn. As normal on Friday, we try to focus on domestic stuff, and we've got some funny, some sad, and some just scary. We had some revolutionary communists running wild in the streets in several major U.S. cities on the 4th of July. So we'll be getting into that, and we'll be getting into some of the domestic, just the kind of the nuttiness around the election. And evidently, there is clearly a groundswell within the American left that somebody should go out and kill presidential candidates, as if that's a method of fighting back against a legitimate political challenge. But what do I know? All right, what were you going to say, Watcher? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, well, I was going to say it's funny that no matter where you go, it always seems to be old dotards obsessed with ice cream in the leadership. But before we take off from the thumbnail, yeah, we got a picture of Putin and Erdogan enjoying a local Turkish ice cream-like substance that apparently doesn't melt in the heat.
What I want to know is did they do the tricks, the little ice cream cone tricks on Putin when he was?
I feel like they're trolling on Biden here.
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
I wouldn't put it past either of these men, actually.
So you have to admit, with Putin looking at it, it's like, what is this thing?
Oh, well, see, you haven't seen the video, and he goes in on that cone. Ooh.
He's like, this looks like this girl I knew once back when I was working in East Germany.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. All right, you have made a completely family friendly show about the international policy into something.
Yeah, and here I was
dirty and-
literally just 30 seconds before the show started being like, damn it, there's pastors talking, spreading our show around. I need to clean myself. I need to clean my act up.
Well, Joe, you have already explained to us how you're doing today. Clearly, well and good, and thinking about ice cream. Well, you were just talking about the ice cream in the video.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that you sounds like you're in a good mood.
You know what? I actually am, because we got some good news about our event. We've got a lot of things moving. For those who are fans of him, Viking Preparedness, Pastor Joe Fox will be joining us in August in Big Fork, Montana, which that's kind of a big deal. He's a lot of fun. He's a pretty knowledgeable guy, and very big into preparedness. So he'll be out there. And Stormy, one does not preclude the other. And Natalie, write this down. Every color is good on me. No, I'm just kidding.
Red is a good color. Look at you.
It's a Shield Arms shirt, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there. It says "Always be armed" on the back, and I kind of like that idea. But we've got things moving. The reason why we have to end the show on time today, I'm going to say that a million times, is because we are meeting with Shield Arms about the event in Montana. We're going to have a good time, and I hope that as many of you come out as possible. And we're going to have some speaking engagements by a bunch of these guys. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, you got some video to show us here, Watcher, real quick. The first rabbit hole that distracts us from being on time today. Yeah, there you go. He's going after that ice cream. Yep. That's it. Let's see. Sniper, welcome. I hope all is well with you. I hope we've got good audio for you today, because you just completely rage quit after the chat gave you hell about your audio the other day.
No, I wasn't mad. It's just it's very obvious that device is no longer going to work with StreamYards, and it's probably something software.
Oh, this is so much better.
And
yeah, you sound great right now.
Oh Lord,
it's your channel, but I'm not going to distract from your channel. That said, I'm a little under the weather. Got a bit of a sinus cold going on, but and I'm getting ready to put a hitch on a Mini Cooper because reasons. But all in all, it's an okay morning. I'm doing better than the folks over at BYU. I'll say a little prayer for the people that had to get transported to the hospital last night.
Oh yeah,
they paid for front row seats to a fireworks show. They got front row seats to a fireworks show.
Well, Watcher,
what the problem is.
Watcher, can you show that? Can you find that video we were looking at? The BYU. It should be pretty easy to find.
As I understand it, 10 people got transported. Nobody's going to die, it seems like, but I didn't see if there were any little kids. I just hope there were no little kids.
We should have some kind of.
That wasn't the craziest thing that happened yesterday, but let's show that. If we have that video, let's show that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just like fireworks, bam, just goes on.
Like it literally nailed that dude.
Oh, that's not all of it.
That's a chick, and it kept happening. I'm just saying that these cheerleaders need to start doing incoming drills. That clearly that's what's wrong here.
That's not all of it, because some of it wound up in the stands.
Yeah. The video keeps going. It does show that.
Well, that video is only 3 seconds long. So.
Well, this is probably a good time to bring up the second crazy thing that happened yesterday.
Here we go.
Oh, you found the video? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, this is absolutely nuts. It's almost like those F-15s flying overhead drop cluster munitions on this crowd.
So, as I understand it, nobody's going to die or anything. I just hope there were no little kids hurt. And other than that, let's get on with the fireworks that are the Democratic Party.
Well, hold on, though. Who had live action Jaws on their bingo card?
right.
Because live action Jaws literally happened. And I'm not really making fun of it because I want to talk seriously about it for everyone. 4 people were attacked by a single shark in South Padre Island. There were some pretty horrific injuries. And actually, a fan of mine, fan of the shows, knows the woman who was bit and nearly lost her leg. Apparently, her leg may not be lost. She has some more surgery today. And what I want to do is I want to drop a fundraising link at GoFundMe. I've already vetted it out. It is them, and this guy is a friend of theirs. So I'd like folks to maybe consider donating. They were on vacation, so there's some medical travel expenses and such that has to happen. So we've already raised $41.60. We only need to raise just a little bit more. Their goal is $5,000.
So first of all, they got the shark, right?
No, the shark is. I don't think they got the shark. They have great video of the shark, but it's
so
a
what
shark.
you're saying is when they went to get the shark claimed that it was the opposite gender, that it had come from a hard family and
Texas. I am disappointed.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but Texas, I am disappointed. You should have been dropping artillery on this thing.
Well,
he looked like he was willing to fight the helicopter. This shark was no joke, man. It was a good size. I'm not sure. It looked like a nurse shark to me, but I'm not an expert. So it was pretty good sized shark, and just kind of went along the beach having a snack.
Let it fight this AT-4. You know what I'm saying?
Ironically, I'll point out that Jaws also happened on the 4th of July. So
I know, right? Like, jeez, man. Yeah, you can't convince me.
Why aren't you carrying a Colt 1911 when swimming on the 4th of July? Exactly right. Exactly.
Well,
right.
With all the crazy crap that I saw this weekend, you cannot convince me anymore that the writers of the multiverse simulation gave up and started giving it over to AI writers at this point that are just mashing everything up.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Indigenous trans shark of color. Oh, well done, Darth Idius. Well done. Although I really doubt that the shark was indigenous. I think what probably happened was it was moved by the hurricane. No, seriously, I really think it was a migrant shark. So
what you're saying is they're not sending their best sharks.
They're not sending their best sharks.
Nice.
All right. Old Hong Kong is here in the house. It's been too long, Jim. I know you're a busy man. You're an important man. You're very, you're one of these men who are always in demand in many different places. So we are blessed to have any of your time. And I that sounds like I'm kind of pulling your leg a little bit, but that is true. You always bring some great things to the conversation.
I love it. I love it when people like you blow sunshine up my ass. It just it allows me. It allows me to tolerate Joe's spam colored shirt.
Oh, no!
And listen, though.
I mean,
what other two guys, Jim, will take you to the world's sketchiest Hardee's for breakfast than me and Scott?
Yeah.
Jim, I do want to say you're one of my favorite guests on the show. I worry sometimes that I'm too silly for you and that you despair of me, but I'm glad you keep coming on despite me.
I don't despair any of you guys. I think that you are some of the most important people speaking the truth on the planet. So I'm always pleased to be present and listen and learn, and I've learned a hell of a lot from all of you. So I'll continue to do that and hopefully answer questions that don't inflame people. And good morning, Rick. It's always good to see your name up there. Life's been super, super busy, and I'm going to be geographically undesirable over the next 6 months. But I am aware that there is a meeting in August, and I may be able to spin through depending on where I am.
What did I tell you all? I told you all that we were going to keep hounding Jim until this happened.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, you can't say where, obviously, but can you at least say, are they sending you back into the trenches?
I was going to say
I'm going to go to a lot of fun places to do a lot of fun commercial things in very commercial ways with very, very interesting and commercial people. So I think that sums it up.
If you need an intern to help you out,
I was going to say, if you have
next year, just let me know.
Now, it's funny. Over my career, I've always pretty much been alone. And then as difficult markets began to get more popular, everybody kind of wants to come along, but I much prefer being solo.
You got to be small, right? It's like
unless,
one guy.
but I, the guys I'm working with on this project are some of the best people I've ever dealt with, and so I feel the same way about them, which is if they're around, all they do is help, and I learn a lot. And if they have to go somewhere else and do something else, I know it'll get done in a way that I expect, and I hope they feel that way about me. So
hey, listen, like a mutual acquaintance of ours, I'm going to ask you to just keep me apprised of general locations, because I can make unusual things happen in unusual places when they need to.
I know. Oh no, trust me.
Advance notice.
Trust me. If I'm ever in some of the worst countries on the planet, including those in Africa that are now being challenged by our nice Iranian friends, you'll be the second guy I call after I speak to God and ask him to get me the fuck out of the country.
Exactly right.
It's like,
have we started calling them our allies yet? Our friends and allies.
The problem is our friends and allies. We've been very naughty with our friends and allies for the last 10 years, and we've been unpredictable and persnickety. And the DC class has been driven by weekly polling rather than long-term strategy and an understanding of who our friends really are. So there's going to be some resets up in DC in the next 6 months, I think. And hopefully it all goes in the right direction, because our allies are exhausted by our vibration rate. The U.S. has a policy of immediate reaction to things politic and total disregard for things strategic. So we've got a lot of challenges ahead. And so I've got my fingers crossed. And as I always tell you guys, which causes Stan's head to blow off, I am hopeful, and I try to remain so.
Well, that's hope is actually something that, we kind of talk that it's a little Pollyanna-ish or whatever, but it's actually something I think that's pretty important, especially for, good people.
Well, you must be able to see what I'm wearing today, because I'm wearing my Pollyanna outfit. So
very good, very good.
It won't be complete until you get a new straw hat. I'm sorry.
You're not wrong,
wait, tengo uno, no, eh? I got a new one. So you'll like it. It's a little more Tejano, and it's a little less Panameño, but it's
I was gonna say it's funny, because I know that the very first companion that he ran into with that hat muffled up took the opportunity to buy him a new one as soon as they saw it. Yeah.
So I'm happy, but I do need a new Panameño, and I'll figure that one out at some point when I see one that I like. The first one took me 2 years.
It was really the best moment of the last couple of years was me and Scott pulling into Matt's place, and Scott going, "Who do you think is Jim?" And I'm like, "I'm betting it's the guy in the straw hat."
I was still even money, Jim, that because I had no, other than listening to you through the headsets and stuff, I had no information about you whatsoever, and I was betting even money that you were Asian. So,
well, there's only one better looking guy down there than me, and that's Rick. And if you'd made that mistake, I would have been good with it.
Although poor John was slaving away making a roast that we all ate because we were intoxicated, not because we were planning to eat it.
I don't remember being intoxicated.
That's okay. The rest of us do.
All right, let's move on, shall we? Watcher, how you doing, brother?
I am. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still feeling about 10 feet tall. I was the hero of my small children's firework display last night. It was multiple hours long. We did comply with the Joe Dolio Star Spangled Banner rule. Although well, kind of, but I'm going to say I timed it wrong, because like the firework that I picked was 3 minutes long, and the full track for the live performance that he did of the Star Spangled Banner was 4 minutes long. And so I would have timed it differently if I'd have thought better. But yeah, we did pretty good. It was pretty exciting.
Every 4th of July is just a dress rehearsal for the next one.
That's
right?
That's
correct. So like you make some notes, and hey, as a former NCO, I'm disappointed you didn't go and have some rehearsals beforehand, shooting off maybe like an extra, of whatever, just to time it and figure out what it
I
looks
bet
like.
there was a really good safety briefing beforehand, though.
Well,
I bet
you
there
know
was.
what? Legitimately, they're actually. What's funny is that Joe knows that I did this for a living for a while, and there legitimately was. It's like I actually sat him down and sat him on a line and said, "Okay." Anyhow, no, it was a blast, and thank you all those who were hanging out online and that kind of stuff. And honestly, there's some super damn interesting stuff going on in the show today. So I'm pretty freaking excited to get to it. And the first is one that I personally have been watching, and it was my suggestion. So I'll toss it out there, and I'll be honest, I'm very curious what Jim has to say about it. Here we go, folks. Tories crushed in a landslide. And that is specifically, I think, the appropriate title. So I think, Scott, you picked a good one here.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from sources that it's not so much that Labour won as that the Tories specifically lost and were largely replaced.
Well, right. I think what we're seeing is a repudiation of the Tories being the torchbearers for any kind of conservative culture within England. I mean, the Tories are essentially the GOP, Vichy GOP uniparty on crack, and we saw that with Liz Truss, and just how terrible that whole thing was. The interesting thing is all the kind of revisionist history that Liz Truss has been coming out doing, talking about how like she was basically sabotaged from within. Now, I do believe some of that stuff happened, but I don't believe that Liz Truss was some sort of paragon of conservative, some kind of neo-Thatcherite.
Well, okay, yeah, and that's what I keep hearing from
skirt.
British people is that she was supposed to be the neo-Thatcher, and I was like, okay, well, her only policy that she actually got in for and the banks bucked her for suggests very much otherwise.
Now, this really is. So here's the one thing that this Labour victory will do is it will show you exactly what a government run, a Britain run by a modern Labour Party will look like. And, I was only half joking when I made that tweet to my friend in England the other day about the caliphate, the Muslim caliphate of Westminster being started, because I think you're going to see more and more bending over backwards for the Muslim minority within England because of this. A lot of other things, a full pedal to the metal of the woke culture. More and more, hate speech laws, and the people getting arrested for tweets. I think all that stuff is it's already happened in England, and it's coming at an even greater pace. And I ultimately think that there's going to be, the next best thing to some sort of a revolution in England from what ends up happening. Let me just kind of read through here a little bit. The Labour Party won a landslide victory in the UK election. Labour took 412 of the 650 seats in the House of Commons, the most since Tony Blair's 1997 triumph. Labour's victory was based on a backing of only 34% of the voters, the lowest ever winning share. So what does this mean? It means a lot of people that didn't even turn out to vote could get really pissed off very quickly and say, wait a second, what the fuck just happened here? And so that's the reason why I think you could see some movement on this fairly quickly if they get too far ahead over their skis. Farage took chunks of the right-wing conservative vote across the country. And I think this is actually the story. And it's this Nigel Farage and him leading this Reform Party, which is literally out of nowhere, right? I don't believe they had any seats. And it's essentially what's kind of coalesced together out of UKIP and some of these other.
Well, it was a first-time party, and I think that they coalesced 2 months out of the three out of the election.
Yeah. I mean, Farage has only been actively campaigning for 30 days or so. Let's see. Let me read a little more here. This looks more like an election the Conservatives have lost than one that Labour have won. I think better to say there is that the Tories have lost, because it's hard to label Rishi Sunak as a conservative. Labor got 3 times as many seats, but did not win. The Conservatives lost and lost badly, punished by the electorate. Reform are the real winners, although they only got 4 seats. I think they ended up getting more than 4 seats. I think. Let's see. Is there something on here that shows?
Yeah, I had heard from multiple people 13, that they got a lot. 13 is what I had heard.
Yeah, I think 13 is where they're at. This is probably just when this was initially written. Let's see a couple other things. Some of the things that reform voters have said that they lost confidence in traditional politicians. That this is a backlash to all the liberal elite stuff, such as woke policies, gender politics.
So the AI at least is telling me 4.
Okay.
Maybe the other positions that they won were local or something. I don't know.
Well, Nigel Farage won his election, I know, in Essex, which is where.
Well, and specifically to put it in context for people, from what I've been understanding from talking to a lot of, we'll just call them Brit bonks, for the last 12-ish hours in between doing fireworks with my kids. Labor, when they came on the scene, their very first election won 2 seats, 2. And they are now the dominant party. They're running the government. The British government is specifically designed in such a way that it makes it incredibly hard for new and upstart parties to take any kind of power. Is that correct?
May I point one thing out, gentlemen? Today is July 5th, and we don't care about UK politics.
Well, we're hoping they get better, right? That's what this is. We are
You
hoping.
ruined the joke, Watcher. You ruined the joke.
No, I get it. But
I mean, you're right, Joe. That's actually pretty good.
It is. It's true.
So, in the legacy of Blair, there really hasn't been a Tory party in a long time because it's been all Blairites on both sides of the aisle, and at this point, the Tories deserve 0 seats so that they'll finally realize, hey, we actually have to be something different.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, and because I've talked to a bunch of Brits about this, again, they essentially say that the Tories are basically the neocon party on crack. Like it's
Yes.
like everything the neocon party wishes they could get away with.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there in some ways it's the Republican Party from the '90s, but in other ways it's the neocons of the Bush era, and it's the worst of the Vichy GOP now. The kind of the Lincoln Project kind of Republicans. So all of that wrapped up into one big just mess, which is why it's hard to say that this is a repudiation of conservatives.
So let's be quiet for just a moment and see if Stan will speak up. Or not Stan. Let's see if old Hong Kong will speak up. He might be busy.
About the UK?
Yeah. What's your take on this?
I know Nigel. Have for a while. He'd rather be fishing than doing what he's doing, but he's doing it for the right reasons. He's clearly, his Reform Party got a lot of votes. So there's something going on in the UK that's not been satisfied by Labour or by the Conservative movement. And I think what you're seeing is Reform is sucking up the Conservatives across all of the various districts. It's interesting that Nigel's going to sit in the Parliament. I think they'll try to make him out to be difficult and irritating and a clown, but he's not. He's actually got some very good ideas, but he's a complicated guy. And you kind of need that to do what's being done here. Conservative Party has failed and are being handed their marching orders. Labour will not be very liberal. Labour will come in trying to not scare the flock. And then as they need money to do all the feel-good things that they need to do, they will raise taxes, and this will cause another cycle of conservatism to take off. But there's no way to extract them from the major cities based on the immigrant population and the receivers of largesse. I did a kind of talk around when I was there recently, and the feedback I got was, we're really worried about the National Health Service. We're really worried about education, and we're really worried about our kids being able to afford a life that we had. It very reminiscent of things you hear in the United States from people as to why they are on the conservative side of the ledger. And I did not talk to them as conservatives or liberals. I just said, hey, you know, what's got you moving? What's making you vote? And the answer was healthcare, cost of living, and I'm just worried about my kids and my grandkids being able to have a life.
So I'd like to do something. Can I get you to act as a safety line? I'd like to connect some dots for maybe some of our viewers who aren't paying or haven't been paying attention to UK politics at all. Guys, you may know that Brexit happened and that Nigel Farage was one of the main voices behind that. He spoke up at the time, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, they formed a new party called like the Brexit Party, essentially, that gained a bunch of votes, and they were able to get Brexit through, but they weren't able to get enough support within the government to form a ruling party. And so they partnered with the Tories, who had the support to actually rule at the time. And the Tories completely and utterly betrayed every single principle that Brexit was founded upon entirely in order to try and basically punish the country and crush it. Correct?
Yes, but the failure of the Brexit Party was that it was essentially a ad hoc structure made for the Brexit elections, and then once that was kind of done, it just kind of fizzled out. They tried to,
like is happening right now.
Yeah, I think what Watcher's saying is it's not unlike what happened when Donald Trump became president here.
Correct.
And everybody in the bureaucratic class turned on him even before he took office because they understood he was going to make massive change.
Yeah, I think I think that George Lucas said it best. It kind of rhymes, you know.
This is actually a really good analogy here. Penis Chase Helicopter says Brexit equals Tea Party, right? So to the extent that Tea Party were made of mostly conservative Republicans, they were never like a separate party on the ballot.
Right.
And you have to understand that Farage was not a UK member of parliament. He was a European member of parliament.
Yeah, right.
So he was.
That's right.
And what you have here, just looking at the demographics of the vote, what little I've been able to garner, is that 41% of the vote went reform, but they only get 4 seats. Yeah. And so what that says is it's a massive scatter diagram across the country, but it represents a big piece of the country that cannot vote in a district in densities necessary to kick out the incumbencies. So this is going to be really interesting how this goes forward, because if 41% of the people are voting for reform and you're only getting 4 seats, that says to me that in the future reform will pick up more seats. But I have a feeling the bureaucracy will gun for them as aggressively as they gun for Trump here. And we'll see how that all shakes out.
Well, what's the term they have in France? It's like an official term for the parties coalescing against the right wing. I can't even remember what it's called, but they have like a funny official term for it that essentially got breached this time.
I don't know what you're talking about, but between the U.S. and everybody else who we have problems, the word that's usually used is entente cordiale, right?
There you have it. That's exactly
is that the right word.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, this is interesting. I think it's something to keep our eyes on. Why do we care about British politics? Well, because Britain is a close ally of the U.S. They are also one of the kind of the actual movers and shakers in Europe, despite the fact that they are no longer part of the European Union.
Well, I'll give you a more direct reason, okay? And this is more okay. The enemy that we're fighting is the exact same enemy the British are fighting, and the way that they react to what the British are doing will give you a clue to how they'll react to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, and then also you got to remember that as America came from essentially English political action,
Yeah, British common
we
law.
do have, there are connections between the very deep and strong connections between the U.S. and the U.K. So, so anyway, all right, let's just move on. By the way, I just did a little reading while we were kind of chatting there. The Brexit Party was a full-on political party, but it did not get any seats in Parliament. And the Reform Party is essentially the renamed Brexit Party. So I think that's what was confusing me, was the fact that it was very popular, but it just never got any seats in Parliament. So, so Reform has done something that the Brexit Party couldn't do.
And again, and I think there's a lesson to take from this. All right, because what happened to the Brexit Party? What happened to the Tea Party? Well, the Tea Party maybe a little less so, but the Brexit Party, they coalesced directly before an election because it was an important single issue vote that people were very, very passionate about, and honestly, it needed to be done. Okay. And they were able to be swept aside because of the political apparatuses that were there. And it's interesting that they're coming back, and it's great that they're getting a second bite at the apple. That doesn't generally happen. And you might want to learn from that and try and be a little more disciplined in where you are pushing in your political leanings. That whole vote local thing is not a joke.
All right, let's. There's actually a second piece to this that I wanted. And no, I guess.
Yeah. We need to get moving. So.
All right, moving on.
It's a shame. It's a shame we don't have Stan here for this, because he's the most impassioned about the following topic.
Yeah, this is one that I saw, and I knew that it was important, but I also thought that this would have been a great one for Stan to talk about. So, inside the Chinese money laundering network fueling America's fentanyl crisis. I love this diagram because it accurately depicts exactly how China is. For people who think, oh, fentanyl, that's the Mexican cartels. Well, they're just a cog in the machine, right? The machine
If
is.
this thing was really accurate,
right,
it would mention that Mexico thing. It would have the words Hutchison Whampoa on it, because that's how it's getting here.
Correct. But at least, you know what? I'm happy that someone's finally mentioning Canada, because I've heard that at least a quarter of it's coming through Canada.
Yeah, a lot of it is. It's worth noting that 100,000 Americans die of drug-related deaths per year. The vast majority from pills cooked with fentanyl, an opioid that's analog to 50 times more potent than heroin. Every 6 months, the U.S. drug death catastrophe eclipses the Vietnam War. Fueling fentanyl epidemic across the U.S. are Chinese money launderers helping international drug traffickers like Mexican cartels. Capital flight from China is not a new phenomenon, but in recent years, the scale of these transfers washed through the drug trade has become very alarming. That's an interesting kind of aspect there, Jim. I mean, capital flight has always been a thing out of Red China, but this is an interesting kind of way to cast this. And it's one that until I had read this article, I hadn't really given a lot of thought to. What's your kind of take on how capital flight from China might be behind this?
Yeah, is it capital flight or is it state-directed warfare?
That's
both.
actually a really good question, because what it is illegal entities, so very traditional Chinese organized crime entities, read triads and others, who are used for state policy and then allowed to make money and own business. So you'll find that a lot of these picking and packing houses in China that are moving chemicals are owned by these criminal entities. And the party allows it because this outcome is something that they, don't want to stop. And a lot of the money that's generated will stay offshore, and it's described as capital flight. But if you think about what it is it's a way to get hard dollars into China to give to the manufacturers, and then 10% of the hard dollars that go into China get dropped off somewhere like Hong Kong, and they keep them there in their own hands, and then they move it to Mexico, and then there's another big piece of money that's made, and that money then stays in Mexico or comes back. It stays in Mexico and does manufacturing facilities for Chinese companies as maquiladoras. And then they sell it into the United States, and that cash goes out across the border to Mexico, where the Mexican organized crime units give it to the Chinese organized crime units to move it back into circulation and back to China to buy more materials. So it is a closed loop supply chain that the Chinese government seems to support because of the amount of money that's being made and the amount of damage that's being done in the United States. And the sad thing is, from our standpoint, is we can't control that. Our government understands what's being done, and they've chosen to do nothing.
Oh.
And that's the part we don't understand. And my guess is it's just on the weeklies, it doesn't really matter. On the monthlies, it doesn't really matter. And at the end of the day, they don't want to piss Mexico off. But this is killing 100,000 Americans. And it's a mechanism to send money into organized crime in Mexico and across Southeast Asia. And we know where that all ends up. So I'm pretty flabbergasted that the leadership in DC is unwilling to step up on this one. And there is no excuse. And if I was one of the family members who'd lost a person in the last 3 to 4 years, I'd be very, very, very angry. And I'd be banging the table in front of my Congress and senators and saying, what the hell are you guys doing? Somebody's making money somewhere.
That what's described there in the italics is just a Hawala network, only applied to the Chinese model.
I want to read that real quick.
It's money laundering. It's exactly what it is. It is the Chinese Hawala.
So what they're describing here is a Chinese student who's living in New York, and their costs come out to roughly $66,000 a year. But the Chinese transfer system only allows them to transfer $50,000 a year. So what do? Well, they send out a message on WeChat, which is literally what X is trying to become. It's everything. It's financial transfers. It's social media. It's everything all put together. Phone calls, everything, all put to one, saying, "Hey, I need cash," and somebody comes and hands them the cash that they need, and then their family is then expected to transfer that cash plus extra to an unnamed company that turns out to be the same company who's supplying fentanyl to America, which is stunning.
Not only is it laundering, but it's laundering to the academic world. So maybe this is one of the things that keeps it happening, is it underwrites the university payments of foreign students.
Well, that's exactly what's going on here.
Below this, this is actually important here.
Okay, give me a minute. I gotta it'll take me a second to download it and then make it bigger.
Actually, I think if you just share that's on your screen right there.
Well, I just got to go like this and then go like this, and then I can do this.
So this is like just a diagram of the network here. And so USA processor, USA buyer. If you could just kind of, Jim, if you understand the money laundering piece, I'm sure more than the rest of us. This money, in order for it to kind of be useful to a criminal, like that was always the joke, right? They had all this money, like, the problem for the Pablo Escobar was not that he didn't have a lot of money. It was that he didn't have a way to have useful money, right? To be able to, launder it and then be able to use it in kind of more broad ways. I think all drug dealers would love to be able to launder their money and pay taxes. So essentially that they never get bothered, from that aspect. If you could kind of just walk us through what's going on here, I would appreciate that.
Well, it all starts with things that cost very little money, but are illegal, that have incredibly high profits and go into cash payments. And so the drugs, when they hit the U.S. border, become of value. So the plastic bag full of chemicals in China will get you killed. The plastic bag in Mexico is worth $50. The plastic bag in the United States is worth $100. And then when you sell it for $100, the money goes back into Mexico or some other pathway back to whoever is making the money in China. Mexico takes its vigorum, right? It takes its cut. And then they're stuck with literally rooms full of cash. And if you've ever seen some of the raids in Mexico where they find the Chinese nationals in an apartment, it is literally ceiling to floor in all the rooms, US dollars, pesos, and pretty much every currency you can imagine. So that has to go somewhere. So it goes into domestic investment in Mexico and Latin America. It becomes operating capital to sell trucks, to sell technology. It becomes operating capital to buy semiconductors that you can't buy in China because it's illegal, right? So it's gray market capital. And so it flows through various tubes and pipes, and everybody takes a little skim off it. But it's a very, very big part of the international Chinese business that's allowing them to transition to a closed network or survive being a closed network with Russia, the renminbi, the ruble, and the support of the BRICS, right? So again, the US is subsidizing the creation of our major competitor. And that's where I really get pissed off. And they will touch literally everything. They will touch the students. They will touch travel. I can almost guarantee you that this is financing every one of those people who's been crossing the Chinese nationals of military age. It's all funded through this same network of money. And people are borrowing it. People are lending it. And what's going to be really interesting to see is how they begin to enforce the collection process. They're going to have thumbs on the families back in China, would be my guess. But it doesn't end well for the folks who are out at the edge of this. And it's going to continue because we have no interest in the U.S. government to shut it down. It's been going on for a long time, and we've never done anything about it. And Homeland can't touch it. And for some reason, the international arm of government has no desire to do anything of consequence in Mexico. They'll say they're doing it now, but if you look at it, they've kind of done a little bit of Midland stuff. The only action I've seen is when the 2 USDA inspectors, avocado inspectors, were grabbed a while back. They actually did get a little aggressive about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there have been some kind of twists and unexpected things, in how this has all gone down. The problem ultimately is we're thinking of this, I think, as a law enforcement kind of thing. Joe, we saw the whole war on drugs, back in the 80s and all this kind of stuff. The problem is that, when they saw how ineffectual we were being with the law enforcement, they basically declared real war on us through this kind of pipeline. And now we are left holding the bag for this.
Some might call it asymmetrical warfare.
Warfare, exactly right. And about the only way to defeat it would be to treat it as a real war and not.
And they don't want to make that transition because even though they know, but I mean, it's not, Pinochet brings up Kiki Camarena. We've lost people in Mexico. We've lost people on the border to this activity over the years, and there is, for some reason in DC, no desire to demand responsible management by the Mexican government. And there never has been. And I'm not sure why, but this one's out of control. And having a foreign power that is driving this much of the Mexican economy is very dangerous from my perspective. And I'm not sure why DC hasn't put it in a higher priority and begun to take active measures to at least disintermediate this supply chain.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, as long as I've been thinking about it, the only justification in my mind is they don't want the Chinese doing the same in the South China Sea. And if we begin to interdict specific things coming into North America because it is a criminal act from the perspective of the United States, which we've been doing for decades, by the way, then perhaps the Chinese will begin to go after things that they believe are criminal acts in China, such as inspecting ships coming and going out of Taiwan, which we've been talking about here for the last 3 years. It's beginning to be tested. If we get to the point where they do that, it becomes very economically painful to everyone. So I think DC is
the ship off Kinmen yesterday. So
yeah, I watched that, and we've talked about that's when it starts. So that's clearly somebody kicked it off. Somebody said this is going to begin. The Taiwan
Coast Guard attempted to intervene, but backed off when they realized they were about to start shooting. So Kinmen is hot. That's where it'll start. But yes.
Yeah, that is an entirely different subject, and this fentanyl crisis and the kind of the connection of China, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. Could be an entire show, much less an entire full segment. So we're going to have to move on at this point.
What do you
All
got
right,
on
so
this?
we've got. So I when I saw this, guys, when I saw this story, I was
Yeah.
just like, "Oh, you got to be freaking kidding me!"
What?
It looks like our Chechen utility workers also do jobs in Arkansas as well. Explosion rocks General Dynamics Hellfire and Javelin missile factory in Arkansas. An early Wednesday morning explosion rocked the facility in Camden, Arkansas, injuring at least 2 and leaving 1 person missing. I don't think he's missing. I think he is just
They just haven't found enough
probably-
parts to claim they found him.
Exactly right. Local media outlet says an incident involving pyrotechnics occurred at the General Dynamics Ordnance and Tactical Systems facility in Camden, Arkansas. At this time, we are working with first responders and can confirm the incident resulted in at least 2 injuries. So, this is one of those kind of things, guys. It very well could just be an accident, but the timing of this accident is very odd indeed.
Especially after there's been a spate of these attacks throughout Europe that have been directly attributed to the SVR. So,
I think I think that's a good bet. I do. I don't want to throw a wet blanket and say I don't think that's possible, but I do want to remind everybody of the 1988 PepCon explosion, which is the first thing this made me think of. I don't know if you guys know much about that, but when you're working with high explosives and rocket fuel particularly, there are a lot of safety procedures that, particularly when you hear about these high-level companies that have decided that they don't really need expertise in their production line anymore, and that they can get away with hiring the lowest bottom of the tier and try and get people through the system before they end up owing them massive benefits. It makes me wonder if look, man, the PepCon disaster was caused by literally a guy not understanding that he couldn't use a shovel to try and clear an area that had a metal grate. And that's like, you think, yeah, obviously you work in a rocket fuel factory, but like, remember, like in some parts of it, you can use shovels, which is why they had shovels there, right? Like, it's something that if you're not actually specifically trained on a job, very detailed, meticulously trained on a job, maybe potentially working there for years, it's super easy to fuck up.
Yeah, that PepCon thing, if I remember correctly, that video looked like a freaking nuclear bomb going on.
Yes, it did. It absolutely did.
All right. So, guys, anything, Joe? Anything more on this one you want to kind of drill down into? I mean, not a whole lot of information yet, but I was happy to only find 3 people were injured.
Did you see my note about you needing to find a shorter way to ask questions? There it was again.
It was a statement and a question combined, Joe.
I got you. The official story is that there was some sort of a pyrotechnics incident, so they're blaming fireworks on this, which I think is kind of silly. But coming at a time when Russia says, hey, there's going to be consequences for America continuing to supply weapons to Ukraine, and then we have an explosion at a plant that is supplying weapons to Ukraine. I think that it's really, we're grasping at straws when we start saying all these other things. The most obvious answer is most often true. So I wouldn't put this past the SVR. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a chance that could happen. The only thing that keeps me from thinking that they might not be involved is I think they'd be more effective.
Well, someone will say, well, but it was probably an employee in the plant. If you think the Russians don't have at least one employee working in every one of these plants, I've got bad news for you. They are the best in the world at the espionage game. I guarantee you they got somebody working in each one of these plants that's feeding them information. So,
yeah. All right. I think we need to continue forward on this one. There's a lot more we could talk about, but yeah. All right. So for an abbreviated kind of commercial segment, go check out Joe's tactical-wisdom.com, buy his books. He needs money. He writes stuff every week, so make sure you check out the latest the latest columns over there. Also, over on Indiegogo, I've got my. We are over 21,000 with 350 backers, so we're doing very well. We have 4 days to go, I believe, on my campaign. So go check that out. Help us put, kind of throw it over the. I'd love to get to 25,000 before the end of the campaign. So if you haven't backed, if you like miniatures and you like comics and things like that, you'll like this. So check it out. All right. And I'll just leave it to the mods to throw those in there. Let's jump into segment number 1, if you can, guys. Balancing coalition. So essentially what this is, it's all the people who hate America or who worry about the fact that America might be a little too heavy-handed in the world, kind of teaming up, right? And so that kind of was, emblematic of the Erdogan-Putin ice cream fest that was going on our thumbnail. But so that kind of goes even further, right? Because, kind of getting to the Putin-Erdogan thing, this first story has us talking about Putin and Erdogan discussing Syria rapprochement to squeeze out Pentagon occupation. So essentially, you've got a 3-sided deal in Syria, right? You've got the northern portion, which is where Turkish-backed forces who are anti-Assad, and then you've got the Assad forces who are, have Russian backing, and then you've got the U.S. out in the east supporting the Kurds and the SDF. All of that is still there. And what we're starting to see is Russia and Erdogan basically deciding, hey, maybe if we kind of put bygones to be bygones, we can collectively push out the American forces in the east of the country. I think that's a pretty interesting, you've got the whole NATO ally teaming up with Russia potentially to push the U.S. out of their backyard. And let it be known, this is Turkey's backyard, Syria. Let me read a little bit of the story, and then I'll throw it to the panel. During the ongoing Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO annual summit, which is being held in Kazakhstan's capital of Astana, Russia's Putin and Turkey's Erdogan publicly broached the subject of a potential Turkey rapprochement with the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad. The two have been in a de facto state of war for over a decade, with Turkish troops still occupying northern Syria territory, and after relations are cut in 2011 upon the start of the war. Turkey was foremost amongst NATO allies pushing regime change in Damascus, which involved covert support to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other jihadist insurgents. That's the ironic thing. The
Yes.
good guys, right? The NATO country is the one that's actually backing ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the other, Al-Nusra folks the most.
Well, Al-Qaeda changed their name to Al-Nusra to get around funding restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
And let it be said, the CIA was in there funding all those groups as well to, as a kind of like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing. And what they didn't realize is ISIS was way worse than the people they thought that were their enemies.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Scott. So the reason we were in there was to do what? Haven't answered that question very well by DC for a long time now. But the oil revenues and the disintermediation of the oil revenues was a big deal because it allowed the self-funding of the project, right? So we got control over oil fields, we got control over oil transit, and it was all part of we can't let the bad people get access to oil. But what ended up happening is we started skimming on that oil business, and it's self-fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
So it's not unlike what the Chinese are doing in Mexico, except the people who die aren't Americans in this play. We lose a few here and there, but in the case of the Chinese activity in Mexico, we lose 100,000, right? Which is why the outrage should be there for the things that are going on in Mexico. And for some reason, official DC just loves holding on to this territory in the middle of Syria. And what they'll say is, well, it's the only way we saved Israel from that attack by Iran, right? They'll say, we need those towers. We need that, the electronic capabilities further away from the Israeli border, blah, 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 blah. There will always be a reason to have troops there from the standpoint of bureaucratic Washington.
Well, the irony is that we didn't seem to have a real purpose at all for that force that was out there outside of the anti-ISIS piece until Trump started saying, "Hey, listen, and where I want to take the oil." But even by the end of the Trump administration, he was like, "Why are we there? We should get our guys the hell out of there." It was only the essentially the administrative state that pushed back against him and basically ignored his orders in the last year that he was president when he was trying to get those U.S. troops out of there.
If you think back to Vietnam and Air America and the discussions of supporting the local guerrilla armies in Burma, Thailand, Laos, who were also the people who were doing what? They were raising poppies and making heroin. Yeah. All right. So when you have these kind of making bets on local stabilization, you shake hands with the devil, right? And it's really hard to give up the money because the money is the project, which is the next contract year, which is the next contract year, And so we've had a lot of contract extensions in these various places, and there's never a good time to give up millions and millions of dollars in revenue that flows back into the Beltway, right?
Yeah.
We know this.
Yeah. I'll point out, too, that for as much as everyone wants to call Donald Trump a Russian asset, he gave the orders that led directly to the deaths of several hundred Russians in Syria. So,
True.
And the loss of at least one tank. So
true, but I can't let a good transition go. Speaking of shaking hands with the devil.
Yes. China, this is an Al Jazeera story, so just keep this in mind. China and Russia highlight global tectonic shifts in global politics. Comments come in at Shanghai Cooperation Summit, a regional bloc that Moscow and Beijing see as a counterweight to U.S. hegemony in the world stage. Let's see, what do we got here? Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi were in Kazakhstan's capital Astana on Thursday for the gathering of the SCO. Let's see, Xi called on countries to resist external interference, while Putin said new centers of political and economic might are on the rise. So the SCO is essentially the security version of BRICS, right? Now, clearly, the SCO is much smaller and much more focused than the kind of the more amorphous blob of BRICS. But if you don't think that they aren't completely linked, at least in the minds of China and Russia, you're crazy. What were you going to say, Watcher?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe?
I would see the SCO eventually sort of meld with the CSTO. And becoming the new Warsaw Pact, right? Only it would be the Shanghai Pact.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, just for the, if I remember correctly, the CSTO is basically all the former.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is what they've named.
No, but the
which
CSTO
is funny.
Is the Common Security something organization.
It's all the former Russian states, essentially.
No, I get you, but what I'm saying is it's funny that they named it this, because unlike NATO, which you can't really confuse for anything other than military, this looks like something you might pitch to like your local what do you call it? The Chamber of Commerce in order to try and generate Chinese business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some ironic kind of language coming out of this too. So let's just
I'd
look
see
at this.
How many checks the SCO is cut to Gretchen Whitmer.
I'm
not even exaggerating. So
This is a quote from Xi. It's of vital importance to the world that the SCO be on the right side of history and on the side of fairness and justice. In a joint declaration published by the Kremlin, the group noted tectonic shifts in global politics and called for the bloc to play an enhanced role in global and regional security. The use of force is increasing. The norms of international law are systemically being violated. Geopolitical confrontation and the conflicts are growing, and risks to stability in the world and the SCO region are multiplying. That was the statement.
I'm sorry, I have to cut in with this. Jim, this is directly applicable and apparently happened yesterday. I can't help but feel that we've picked the wrong article and are bearing the lead. Do you want to give us
go for it. Everybody needs to look at how much this organization has grown, right?
This was yesterday.
And this is a joint defense activity. This is
Belarus.
This is their NATO, guys.
Yeah, Belarus joined Chinese NATO.
And
yeah,
Turkey, a member of NATO, is talking to them about joining. So understand, this is going somewhere we don't want it to go.
Did you pull a different link, Watcher, than the link I have in the thing?
Yes, yep. This is the one that Old Hong Kong just put in the private chat.
Oh, okay. That's what it is.
So basically, what you have is everybody who is claiming to be non-aligned is circling this organization now.
Yeah.
And what you have to understand is it's compelling for people who don't like the concept of individual liberty, right? And the whole concept of, well, these guys are all going to fail. It's not going to fail the way we believe failure occurs. It's not going to be the walls coming down in 89. It's going to be, they may fail like Venezuela, and they may contract the economy by 50, 60%, but they'll still be in control, right?
Right.
And remember, everybody said, oh, Venezuela is going to collapse. It's going to collapse, or it's going to collapse. They're going to vote people. They're going to put a new government in. It'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back. None of these places are coming back because they've got a group that is self-supporting and mutually supporting.
Well,
and this group is growing. And for some reason in Washington, they don't want to have this conversation because it looks ugly. I think 2 years ago, we made a comment about this is the formation of the maquiladora structure for the Chinese across Europe. This is who you're looking at here.
Well, the other thing that's, if you look at the anti-NATO CSO kind of organization, the China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, those are the founding members. Nothing crazy there. That sounds like what you would expect out of something like this. But then if you look at 2017's, the countries that joined, India and Pakistan both joined. So India, this democratic country who is such a great ally of the U.S., is actually a member of a security organization aligned very much with the policies of China and Russia.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're talking about somewhere that's opposed to individual liberty, oh boy. And that's a bad move for us, people, because I'll tell you that in almost all of the war games that are being done about how to contain China over the next 20 years, India is literally the key component.
Well, we literally have bet on them as part of the Quad alliance.
The Quad, right.
And here they are directly going against that. So,
Well, no, they're hedging their bets. They're
exactly
maintaining what they call non-alignment, and they've been there the whole time. And the fact that official Washington believes that in a quarter before an election, they can get the Indians to come out and change the direction of their whole fundamental political structure, change their diplomatic structure, and walk away from Russia and China. It's hard to do. China's a direct threat to them. Russia is where they've been getting their weapons for years. They just grounded the MiG-21 fleet. All right. You want to talk about how long they've been in bed with the Russians? They just grounded the MiG-21, right? And they're going to have to replace it. They're replacing it with Rafales, and they're replacing it with a mix of things, which is beneficial, but it's taken a long time for that to happen. And so we need to manage our friends like India and we're not doing a great job. I don't see Foggy Bottom doing a great job anywhere. You know that. I talk about it whenever I'm here.
Jim, the irony about the India position is that the only thing that's really making it happen is the fact that Modi, like single-handedly, has drugged the India back into the U.S. sphere. So when you are reliant on one person versus, something that's much more tectonic, for that country, then ultimately, Modi dies, and then, the next guy's, we're going to get so much money from Russia, and America's not giving us any money. So what do we need you for? So that's
so we don't have the money to give them, right?
Exactly right.
So I think
whereas Russia can just give them a cut of all the oil products that comes through India, right?
Well, they buy. Their job isn't to support U.S. Treasury policy of cutting Russia and China off. Their job is to buy low cost oil when it's available, and their Minister of Energy made that point right after Biden came in. U.S. government started. They tried to shame the guy, and he's like, "It's not my job to worry about what you're doing. It's my job to buy cheap oil." And I think the number one political concern in India was, where are we going to get our weapons supplies if we can't buy from the Russians? Because they were used to buying cheaper Russian stuff. Now all of a sudden they've got to buy European and American stuff, and it's much more expensive, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure the U.S. government runs in there and says, "Well, you got to buy more American stuff," and they go, "It's too damn expensive. It's too complicated. It's too the list of twos is massive."
Well, the irony is
honestly, think about the average Indian soldier and the AK-47 versus the AR-15. There's no competition. The AK-47 is a better platform for the rural farmer joining the military, right? Much easier 100%. To figure out and work, and much cheaper.
Well, they instead of that abortion of a rifle that the Indians designed that literally didn't work. They finally decided and bought an AK factory for licensed production of the Century series of AKs. So
now hold on, gents. Now hold on. That Indian rifle may have been bad, but remember, nothing will ever be as bad as the Chinese rifle that they showed off on their own video that was keyholing shots at 20 yards bad.
Hey, listen, watcher. The Chinese rifle shoots bullets. The Indian rifle won't even work. Even if it is a keyhole, you want to get shot in the throat with a keyhole? I wouldn't.
I get you. I don't even understand the physics of how you keyhole at 20 yards. Like, I legitimately believe there must be some kind of barrier at the barrel.
No, it's tolerances in the consumables.
I was gonna say it's bleeding off too much of the gas. So
yeah, it's tolerance, man.
I mean, it's the exact same thing that made that copy of the Dragon rocket the other day just take off during the engine test, right? That's exactly the cause of the keyholing is the cause of everything that fails in China. It's
catastrophic yaw.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Catastrophic yaw. That's a good way.
It's funny you say that. My brain
hold on a second. I can't go away from that transition. Speaking of catastrophic yaw, Viktor Orban, who we were talking about the other day, moving, into some interesting areas in European politics. Hungary's Orban talks Ukrainian peace with Putin, drawing EU censure. I mean, this was not a picture I was expecting to see anytime soon, but yet here it is.
Oh, I don't know. He's been leaning that way for a couple of years.
Oh, no. I mean, I get it. It's just I didn't think he would actually go to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. I thought maybe they might see each other in the sidelines of some big kind of conference or something.
So think about this. Think about this. Orban's taken over the EU, right? He's got that portfolio now. He's in Russia to say to Vladimir Putin, let's figure out a way to bring peace to this. And remember that the Hungarians don't want the immigrants crossing their territory that they've had to deal with under the insanity of the last decade. And the second thing is Hungary is 100% reliant on Russian energy. And so their whole process of supporting their domestic economy and renewed industrial activity is based on being able to get natural gas from Putin, because that's all they have. And so people will vilify Orban for doing this, but just like the Indians, Orban's doing this because he has to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet you'll find all the shills in Washington, the Biden shills are going to be going, oh, he's an evil conservative. He's a dictator, totalitarian, Putin kisser, blah, blah, blah. They'll go into it, man. Watch, it's coming.
They're going to put his name on the list right underneath Trump.
You know, I
on
hate
the contract.
to do this.
But I was going to say, I saw Watcher doing it with the cursor. There are two men in the world who are the king of the handshake, and they are Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin.
I hate to be this guy, but who's at the angle? And
I feel like Trump I feel like Trump's pretty good. His handshake game's on point too.
Yeah, Trump's pretty solid too. He didn't,
and he's got the weight. He's got the weight
for any of Xi's handshake stuff, right? You know, it's pretty solid here. Who's in charge and who's not? So,
when you saw Trump and Kim KJU together, I mean, Trump was he was giddy to meet with Trump, and you know, it was just really funny to see that kind of that dynamic. You know, some leaders have it and some leaders don't. I mean, you know, Jim, you know, you've met probably a lot of these guys in meetings and things like this, and probably business leaders too. I mean, outside of the fact that almost all these guys are borderline sociopaths or psychopaths, I mean, you know, there's definitely head games going on with all of these interactions.
I haven't met these guys, but I know what you're talking about. And understanding how to engage people of power is very important. And in the District of Columbia, there's a lost art here in politics of understanding how you work with people you may not like and how you work with people you may have to oppose. It doesn't mean that you don't work with them. So one of the interesting trends in DC is this hyperpolarization. That whole, I don't like what they say, they're evil Nazis, has kind of bled into the way we build policy. And it's the emotional component has no place in actual policy development. And yet it's driving everything. And it's sad.
I want to say one more thing before we move on. I love this photo because very much like the photo we saw of Zelensky, this just reminds me that this whole war is being fought between midgets. And this entertains me.
All right. We are we got through that segment very well. So I think it's time for us to switch gears for domestic political stuff. So because of that, I'm afraid for all of our wonderful YouTube viewers, let's see, where are we at right now? All 75 of you. You know, every week it seems like our YouTube viewership goes down and down. And I think it's because people are cluing in over to Rumble.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sorry, YouTubers, but I'm going to make a finger gun here in a minute, and YouTube will absolutely shit its pants when that happens. So,
yeah, heaven forbid the old, this is the L, by the way, guys, not a finger gun.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, careful.
If Scott. I were to, see, it's off screen here, you know.
And I think Jim needs to leave us.
Jim needs to go before the transition, I think.
Jim, thanks for being here, brother. Hope anything you want to talk about real quick before you leave?
No. I think things are going championly here. I think we've figured out that the powers that be have been lying through their teeth for an extended period of time, and the outing of Biden's actual condition and the demand of who the hell runs the country is the correct one to do. So I ask that you hold your elected representatives' feet to the fire on this and don't let them become weak. Many of them try, and the way you keep them from doing that is we have a vote coming up, and you want to have a conversation with all of them, and you want to talk to them regularly between now and November, and be hopeful.
And I have a room reserved with your name on it. Just let me know.
Yes, dear.
Yeah,
Yes, Jim.
we're hoping to get you out there, Jim. We definitely we can't do rounds at shots at night without the
I'm not wearing a spam colored T-shirt, but I may try to be. I may try to be there. You guys are great. Enjoy your day.
All right,
Best
brother.
everyone. Rick, hope everything's good in Florida. Be good, y'all.
All right, take care.
Hey,
All right, and as he goes, so does YouTube. Thank you guys on YouTube for tuning in. If you haven't done it already, please move on over to Bongino's, the best censorship-free Italian restaurant in the world. We will be going deep into the domestic political churn over there, so should be a lot of fun. So we'll see you in a moment. Thank you.
Oh.
201. It's 11:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. 3, 6, 4, 6. The chair is against the wall. 3, 6. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. 8, 2, 5, 0, 9. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song. 2, 1.
I have an announcement to make as we're starting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When I first mentioned